Obergrenadier Klaus Weber pressed against the frozen ground, waiting to die. 3 days had passed since his capture in the Ardennes. Hunger gnawed at him, but fear had taken over. He studied the American guards, searching for signs of the torture and executions he'd been told to expect. Beside him, Müller whispered, "They're taking their time." "Psychological warfare," Weber rasped. "They want us afraid before they begin." Kemp, a veteran of the Russian front, muttered, "The Americans have their own methods." More sophisticated ones. Weber recalled General Guderian's warnings. Americans were weak, sentimental, bound by Jewish notions of mercy, but if captured, the Germans would face revenge and death. Now, as American soldiers approached with containers and folded fabric, Weber steeled himself. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." The sergeant leading them had calm eyes. No hatred, no rage. In broken German he said, "Warm, for you," and handed out blankets. Weber froze, suspicious. A trap? Poisoned fabric? But soon every prisoner had one. Real wool, real warmth. Then came the soup, thick, steaming, filled with meat and vegetables. Weber hesitated, but hunger won. The taste overwhelmed him. It wasn't gruel. It was nourishment. Around him, hundreds of prisoners ate silently, confusion spreading through the ranks. "This doesn't make sense," Müller said. "The general said they'd torture us." "The general said many things," Weber murmured, though even he was unsure. The warmth seeped into his body. If this was weakness, it was powerful. If this was inferiority, it was sustained by industry beyond anything Germany could match. As night fell, Weber lay under the American blanket, stomach full, fear replaced by exhaustion. The guards' quiet voices sounded ordinary, human. He tried to believe it was deception, but the blanket was real, the soup was real, and those facts, he thought as sleep took him, were impossible to deny. Morning came with weak December light and the startling realization that Weber was still alive and warm. The American blanket had held heat through the night far better than anything issued by the Wehrmacht. Around him, other prisoners stirred, equally stunned. No executions, no interrogations, just warmth and survival. American soldiers approached again, carrying steaming containers. "Breakfast," Müller whispered, incredulous. Sergeant Mitchell, calm and methodical, offered food with halting German. "Eat, warm." The oatmeal was thick, sweet, served with fresh bread. Weber examined it in disbelief. Prisoners were supposed to be liabilities, not recipients of care. Yet the Americans kept feeding them, systematically, generously. "The blankets better than ours," Müller murmured. Kemp gave a dark laugh. "The lectures said Americans were soft, their equipment inferior. They said capture meant torture and starvation. None of this was mentioned." Weber searched for explanations. Perhaps it was psychological warfare, designed to make them compliant. Yet the Americans demanded nothing, no information, no gratitude. They simply acted as though humane treatment was standard procedure. Later, Mitchell returned with cigarettes, real American tobacco, and offered them freely. The day continued with soap, writing materials, even newspapers printed in German. In the afternoon they were organized, not for labor but for recreation. Prisoners played soccer, others washed in heated water. Kemp shook his head. "We shot prisoners to save rations. We called that strength. The Americans feed us better than our own army did." Weber ate his dinner that night, soup, bread, canned fruit, and felt his beliefs collapsing. Everything he'd been taught about American weakness, about German superiority, no longer fit the evidence. A nation that could feed and clothe its enemies while fighting a global war wasn't weak. It was unimaginably strong. Lying warm beneath his American blanket, Weber faced the most dangerous thought of all. What if everything we believed was wrong? By day 6, Weber could no longer deny it. American prisoner treatment wasn't manipulation, but policy, executed with bureaucratic precision. Camp Lucky Strike ran like a machine. Convoys arrived on schedule, supplies distributed with mathematical efficiency. The Americans had built systems not just to feed prisoners, but to care for them. Weber's infected hand forced direct contact with that system. He'd hidden the wound, knowing how the Wehrmacht punished weakness. But when pain made eating difficult, he finally showed it to Sergeant Mitchell. Within minutes, he was escorted to a medical tent. The American medic examined his hand carefully, cleaned it with iodine, and applied real antibiotics, sulfur drugs, rare even for German officers. "Because you're a human being," the interpreter translated, when Weber asked why. The words struck harder than the antiseptic burn. The Americans treated him not as property, not as leverage, but as a person. They gave him gauze, tablets, and a follow-up appointment. Kemp shook his head when he saw the results. "Better care than I got on the Eastern Front when I was fighting for Germany." Each day brought new impossibilities. Toothbrushes, razors, thread, soap, even recreation leagues. Americans taught prisoners vocational skills. They gave reading material, cigarettes, fruit. This wasn't sentiment, it was system. Lying beneath his warm blanket, Weber realized the truth. German ideology said mercy was weakness. America proved compassion could coexist with overwhelming strength. Nazi doctrine claimed cruelty produced resilience. America's efficiency showed that respect produced results. He'd seen fellow prisoners share useful intelligence freely, not under duress, but over coffee and cigarettes. The Americans didn't need torture. Their humanity worked. As Weber touched his clean bandage, he knew the infection would heal, but his beliefs might not. The facts were undeniable, and they all pointed to the same conclusion. Everything he'd been taught was wrong. December 23rd brought an announcement that broke something fundamental in Weber's understanding of capture and honor. Captain James Thompson, the highest-ranking American officer yet seen, stood before the assembled prisoners with an interpreter. His tone was calm, professional. "Gentlemen," the interpreter translated, "the United States Army, in accordance with the Geneva Convention, is establishing a letter-writing program for prisoners of war. You will be permitted to write letters to family members in Germany. These will be transmitted through the International Red Cross." Silence followed, then chaos. Men shouted, "Impossible!" "A trick. They want to identify our families." Weber sat frozen. Letters. Contact with Margaret? It defied everything they'd been taught. Nazi ideology insisted capture was dishonor, that a prisoner's family must disown him. The shame was meant to sever bonds as completely as death. Yet here were the Americans, restoring those bonds as a matter of policy. Thompson continued evenly. "Each prisoner may write one letter of up to 25 lines. No military or political content. American censors will review them. Our goal is family communication, not information gathering. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us." "Now back to the story." Müller began weeping. "My children will know I'm alive," he said. "They'll know I'm not a coward." Around him, stoic soldiers broke down. The permission to write home cut deeper than any physical comfort. It restored humanity. Kemp wiped his face. "My mother. I thought she'd believe I was dead or disgraced. Now I can tell her I'm still her son." Paper and pencils were distributed. Weber accepted his with trembling hands. 25 lines to reach Margaret, to describe an impossible truth. He stared at the page, paralyzed. How could he explain blankets, soup, and medicine when she expected torture and starvation? His first draft was cautious. "I am safe and being treated adequately." He crumpled it. Too hollow. He began again, this time with dangerous honesty. "Dear Margaret, I must tell you true things, even if they seem impossible. The Americans give us warm blankets and food better than what we had as free soldiers. When my hand was infected, their medic treated me and gave me antibiotics. They provide soap, cigarettes, and kindness, without asking for anything. Everything we were told about them was wrong. Their strength includes mercy, and that mercy is greater than cruelty ever was. I love you, I am safe. Your husband, Klaus. He knew censors would read it, knew Margaret might doubt him, but truth mattered more than safety. Around him, men wrestled with similar choices. Some wept, others stared at the blank paper, terrified of saying too much or too little. Mitchell, the American sergeant, supervised quietly, ensuring privacy and respect. When letters were collected, the interpreter promised, "They will reach Germany through Red Cross channels. Delivery takes several weeks, but they will arrive. This is guaranteed by international law." As Weber handed his letter over, he felt both relief and fear. Margaret would know he was alive, and that her husband no longer believed what the Reich had taught him. Then Thompson addressed them again. "Gentlemen, we are at war with Germany, not with your humanity. You have families who deserve to know you live. We honor the law not for convenience, but because we believe dignity makes us stronger, not weaker." His words fell into absolute silence. It was moral inversion made visible. Germany preached strength through cruelty. America practiced strength through mercy. "My God," Müller whispered. "They truly believe it," Kemp nodded. "And they're right. I've told them more over coffee than I ever would under torture. Their kindness makes me want to help end the war. Brutality would have made me resist forever. Humanity makes me human again." That night, prisoners lay under American blankets, letters written and collected, hearts lighter than they'd been in months. Weber's bandaged hand throbbed less, his infection fading under American medicine. Tomorrow would be Christmas Eve. He thought of Margaret, soon to hold his letter, a message that defied propaganda and carried truth across enemy lines. The Americans had made it possible, not through force, but through principle. In doing so, they'd achieved something far greater than military victory. They'd restored belief in human decency itself. Christmas Eve 1944 dawned cold and clear, bringing news that would finish dismantling Weber's Nazi worldview. Sergeant Mitchell, through an interpreter, announced that American command would include German prisoners in Christmas observances, holiday meals, chaplain-led services, and cultural celebrations. The announcement caused confusion. "They're including us?" Müller asked. "Sharing their holy day with enemies?" Kemp shook his head. "The Wehrmacht would never. We were taught to keep enemies away from our culture, to protect racial purity." Weber understood the shock. Nazi ideology insisted that sharing traditions weakened German identity. Yet the Americans, confident in their own culture, invited prisoners to join them. They weren't afraid of contamination. They believed strength could afford generosity. On Christmas morning, Weber watched the camp fill with the aroma of roasting turkeys, steaming vegetables, and fresh bread. Each prisoner received food better than German officers had ever tasted. White bread, buttered potatoes, even apple pie with sugar. Müller whispered, "They feed us better as prisoners than Germany fed us as citizens." The abundance was undeniable proof of American capability. Nazi doctrine claimed Germany needed conquest to survive scarcity. America showed that organization and democracy could create prosperity vast enough to feed enemies humanely. After the meal, the American chaplain led a Christmas service. His message, translated into German, was simple. War makes enemies of nations, but not of souls. We are all children of God. The words struck Weber deeply. Nazi teaching rejected Christian universalism. Here an American officer was living it. Guards and prisoners sang Silent Night, German and English voices, blending in fragile harmony. Later, soldiers shared photos of families, stories of home, even laughter. Mitchell showed pictures of his wife and children in Minnesota. Weber spoke haltingly of Margaret in Hamburg. Humanity replaced ideology. That evening, Weber realized the truth. American cultural strength lay in inclusion, not exclusion. They didn't fear comparison, they invited it. Their moral confidence was genuine, systematic, and profoundly effective. Kemp summed it up quietly. They shared Christmas with us not because they had to, but because it's who they are. That's real strength. That's civilization. Weber lay beneath his American blanket, full and warm, his infection healed, his certainties gone. America's power, he now understood, came not just from its weapons or industry, But from its unshakable belief in human dignity, Christmas Eve 1944 arrived cold and clear, bringing an announcement that shattered Weber's last illusions. Through an interpreter, Captain Mitchell told the prisoners they would be included in American Christmas observances, special meals, chaplain-led services, and shared celebrations. The camp erupted in disbelief. "They're inviting us, enemy prisoners, to share their holy day?" Müller whispered. Kemp shook his head. "The Wehrmacht would never. We were taught that sharing with inferiors corrupted purity." Weber saw the contrast immediately. Nazi ideology feared contamination. American confidence welcomed inclusion. Their culture was strong enough to share even sacred traditions with defeated foes. Christmas morning proved the promise true. Prisoners received roasted turkey, buttered potatoes, fresh vegetables, soft white bread, and warm apple pie. Müller stared at his plate. "They feed us better as prisoners than Germany fed us as citizens." The abundance defied every belief Nazi propaganda had instilled. America's prosperity seemed limitless, its generosity strategic yet sincere. Later, an American chaplain led a joint Christmas service. His words, translated into German, silenced the crowd. "War makes enemies of nations, but not of souls. We are all children of God." The message directly contradicted Nazi racial ideology, yet it felt real, embodied in the very fact that prisoners were welcome participants, not shunned enemies. Then came carols. Germans sang Stille Nacht as Americans joined in Silent Night, voices intertwining under the same canvas roof. Afterward, guards and prisoners shared photos of families, stories of home, even laughter. Humanity had broken through ideology. That night, Weber lay beneath his American blanket. His infection healed, his mind irrevocably changed. America's power, he realized, came not only from its machines or armies, but from moral confidence, the belief that strength and mercy could coexist. February 1945 brought prisoner work programs that revealed America's labor philosophy through direct experience. Weber joined a construction crew expanding camp housing, beginning with a detailed safety orientation that would have been unthinkable in the Wehrmacht. The American foreman, a former union carpenter from Detroit, explained every precaution: hard hats, gloves, goggles, and mandatory rest breaks with water. "Safety isn't negotiable," he said. "Protecting workers is morally right and economically smart." From the first day, differences were obvious. Americans worked 8-hour shifts with breaks, using quality tools and focusing on skill and precision rather than exhaustion and punishment. Workers received extra rations because labor needs fuel, Mitchell explained. The logic was irrefutable yet revolutionary to Weber, whose homeland treated laborers as expendable. When Weber bruised his thumb, he tried to hide it until the foreman ordered immediate medical attention. The medic cleaned and bandaged it within minutes. 15 minutes now saves days later, he said. "You're a human being who deserves care." That phrase echoed through everything Americans did. They treated health, safety, and respect not as kindness, but as policy. In evening discussions, other prisoners reported the same experiences: proper food, rest, and decent treatment across every assignment. "They treat us better as prisoners than Germany treated us as soldiers," Kemp said. "This isn't generosity. It's organization that values worker welfare," Weber agreed. Germany believed harshness made efficiency. America proves dignity does. The unnamed guard, a former Ohio Union worker, summed it up: "After the war, workers will rebuild through fairness and rights." That's democracy in action. By March, Weber understood. Every American system, medical, educational, social, or labor, was built on the same foundation. Their moral behavior was their strength, turning respect for human dignity into a strategic advantage. March 1945 brought systematic preparation for prisoner repatriation that exceeded anything German forces provided, even to their own soldiers returning from combat. American medical personnel conducted comprehensive health evaluations designed to ensure prisoner fitness for travel while identifying conditions requiring continued treatment after return to Germany. Weber underwent 2-hour medical examination that revealed health problems he'd never known existed. The American doctor, a thorough professional from Boston who'd practiced civilian medicine before military service, checked everything systematically. Vision test revealed Weber needed corrective lenses for astigmatism that had caused chronic headaches he'd attributed to stress. Dental examination identified 3 cavities requiring treatment before travel. Chest X-ray confirmed old rib fracture that had healed incorrectly, explaining persistent discomfort during physical exertion. These conditions should be addressed by German physicians after your return, the doctor explained through interpreter. I'm documenting everything in medical records that will accompany you. German medical personnel will receive comprehensive health history, enabling them to provide appropriate follow-up care. The doctor fitted Weber with prescription glasses, actual corrective lenses manufactured in American facility specifically for prisoner medical needs. The world came into sharp focus, literally and metaphorically. Weber hadn't realized how much visual acuity he'd lost until it was restored. The Americans had identified and corrected problem that German military medicine had never systematically screened for. Dental care program addressed years of neglect with professional attention that Wehrmacht medical service never provided systematically. American dentist filled Weber's cavities using modern techniques and materials, preventing future deterioration and pain. The dentist explained proper oral hygiene, providing toothbrush and toothpaste for continued care after repatriation. Other prisoners received similar comprehensive medical attention. Müller discovered he needed treatment for chronic ear infection that had impaired hearing for months. Kemp received care for injuries from Russian front that Wehrmacht doctors had dismissed as minor, but which American examination revealed required ongoing treatment to prevent permanent disability. Beyond medical care, Americans implemented transition assistance programs, preparing prisoners for civilian life in occupied Germany. Orientation sessions provided information about post-war conditions prisoners would encounter upon return. American officers explained Allied occupation zones, discussed family reunification procedures, and offered practical guidance about navigating devastated homeland. Captain Thompson conducted these sessions with honest directness. Germany has suffered severe damage from Allied bombing and ground combat. Many cities are partially destroyed. Infrastructure is compromised. Food supplies are limited. You will face significant challenges upon return. We're providing this information so you can prepare mentally for difficult conditions. The candor was appreciated. Thompson wasn't minimizing German suffering or celebrating Allied victory. He was treating returning prisoners as adults who deserved honest information about what awaited them. The respect implicit in that honesty reinforced everything Weber had learned about American values. Personal property cataloging demonstrated American commitment to individual rights, extending even to enemy prisoners. Items confiscated upon capture were systematically returned with detailed documentation. Weber received his family photographs, Lutheran prayer book, and wallet containing Margaret's picture, all carefully preserved throughout imprisonment. These belong to you, the American property officer explained. International law requires return of personal items not having military significance. We maintained careful records, ensuring nothing was lost or misappropriated. The systematic property return revealed American administrative competence and moral commitment to prisoner rights. German forces routinely confiscated prisoner property permanently, treating seizure as legitimate spoils of war. Americans maintained detailed records, ensuring individual items were returned to rightful owners. An administrative burden they accepted because respecting property rights mattered even for defeated enemies. Mitchell conducted exit interviews with prisoners, documenting their experiences to improve POW protocols. Weber's interview was thorough, covering medical care received, food quality and quantity, educational programs attended, work assignments completed, and overall treatment assessment. Your testimony contributes to advancing humane prisoner treatment standards, Mitchell explained. American military continuously refines procedures based on prisoner feedback. Your experiences will help ensure future POWs receive even better care. Weber was moved by the explanation. His suffering and transformation weren't meaningless. His testimony would contribute to improving conditions for future prisoners, potentially including American soldiers if circumstances reversed. The systematic learning and improvement revealed American commitment to excellence in prisoner welfare as institutional priority rather than temporary wartime necessity. The exit interview became unexpectedly emotional. Weber thanked Mitchell for treatment that had transformed his understanding of American civilization and democratic values. Mitchell accepted the gratitude with professional modesty but visible satisfaction. "We did what international law and human decency required," Mitchell said. "But I'm glad you experienced it as transformative. Germany will need citizens who understand democratic values during Reconstruction. Your experiences here might contribute to building better German society after the war." The statement revealed American long-term strategic thinking. Humane prisoner treatment wasn't just morally right and militarily effective. It was investment in post-war democratic transformation of German society. Prisoners returning home would carry testimony about American values, spreading understanding that could facilitate peaceful reconstruction and eventual reconciliation. As repatriation processing concluded, Weber reflected on comprehensive care that extended beyond imprisonment into planning for post-war life. Medical records documenting his health conditions, corrective lenses improving his vision, dental work preventing future problems, transition orientation preparing him for harsh realities, personal property returned intact, exit interview valuing his testimony. Every element demonstrated American commitment to prisoner welfare, extending past military utility into genuine concern for long-term individual well-being. The care was systematic, institutional and revelatory. Americans had created comprehensive systems, ensuring prisoners left custody healthier, better informed, and more capable of navigating post-war challenges than when they'd been captured. That institutional commitment to enemy welfare revealed civilization operating at level German military culture had never approached. April 1945 brought final repatriation processing and departure ceremonies, recognizing shared humanity despite former enemy status. American forces systematically returned personal belongings with careful documentation that honored individual property rights. Weber received his family photographs and Lutheran prayer book with detailed property records showing American respect for personal items extended throughout months of custody. The departure ceremony occurred on a clear spring morning. Captain Thompson addressed assembled prisoners with speech, acknowledging the unusual nature of relationships formed across enemy lines. His words, translated carefully by the interpreter, carried emotional weight that transcended military formality. "Gentlemen, our nations have been at war. Many good men on both sides have died in this terrible conflict. But war between nations doesn't erase our common humanity. You came to us as enemies and prisoners. You leave as men we've come to respect as individuals, even while opposing what your nation's government has done. We hope you return to Germany committed to building peaceful, democratic society that will never again threaten world peace." Mitchell spoke next, his voice rough with emotion that suggested genuine attachment to prisoners he'd supervised for months. "I've learned from you just as you've learned from us. You've shown dignity in difficult circumstances. You've worked hard and engaged honestly with democratic education. You've demonstrated that ordinary Germans can embrace values of freedom, dignity, and peace when given opportunity to experience them directly. I hope our paths cross again in peacetime. as friends rather than as guard and prisoner. The unnamed American guard who'd supervised Weber's section throughout imprisonment attended the departure ceremony personally. He moved among prisoners, shaking hands and expressing hope for future German-American friendship. When he reached Weber, the emotional connection was obvious. "You're a good man," the guard said through interpreter. "I've watched you change from frightened prisoner expecting execution to person thinking about democratic future. That transformation gives me hope that Germany can change too, can embrace different values and build peaceful society. Take care of yourself and your wife. Build good life in the new Germany." They exchanged addresses, awkward formality between former enemies contemplating unlikely peacetime correspondence. But the gesture mattered. It acknowledged that relationship formed between them transcended military categories, creating human connection that might survive into post-war world. Kemp received similar farewell from American supervisor who'd overseen his work detail. The two men, both veterans who'd experienced battlefield brutality, shared understanding that transcended language barriers. Their handshake was firm, mutual respect evident in their expressions. Müller wept openly while saying goodbye to American guards who'd shown kindness to young German soldier far from home and family. The Americans' parting gifts, extra cigarettes and candy bars for his children, made him cry harder. Their generosity toward enemy. Prisoner's family demonstrated that American kindness wasn't performance or strategy, but genuine expression of values they actually held. Transportation. Arrangements included medical escorts for prisoners requiring continued care during travel. Americans coordinated with German authorities to ensure smooth reintegration, providing documentation about prisoner health status, skills learned, and recommended follow-up care. The thoroughness revealed planning extending past American custody into ensuring successful transition back to German life. The train departure brought final farewells. Weber looked back at Camp Lucky Strike, the facility where his worldview had been systematically dismantled and rebuilt. The warm blankets, hot soup, medical care, letter-writing programs, Christmas inclusion, democratic education, dignified labor, and comprehensive repatriation preparation had transformed him from Nazi true believer into person who understood that American civilization represented values worth emulating rather than destroying. Mitchell stood on the platform, waving farewell to prisoners he'd supervised with professional competence and genuine humanity. His presence at the departure, his visible emotion at the parting, his expressed hope for prisoners' future well-being, all demonstrated that relationships formed between guards and prisoners had been authentic rather than merely professional. As the train pulled away, Weber watched Camp Lucky Strike disappear into the distance. Months of captivity that should have been brutal imprisonment had instead become education in democratic values and humane civilization. The Americans had demonstrated that strength included kindness, that military effectiveness coexisted with moral behavior, and that treating enemies with dignity was strategic wisdom rather than naive weakness. The journey toward occupied Germany carried Weber away from American custody, but toward life shaped by American influence. The testimony he would share, the democratic understanding he'd gained, the recognition that civilized behavior enhanced rather than diminished national power, all would influence how he approached post-war reconstruction and German future. Beside him, Müller clutched candy bars for his children, gifts from former enemies who'd shown more kindness than Wehrmacht leadership ever had. Across the aisle, Kemp studied the medical records Americans had prepared, documentation of healthcare that exceeded anything German military provided its own soldiers. Around them, hundreds of German prisoners carried similar evidence of American systematic humanity. They were returning to devastated homeland carrying testimony that would challenge Nazi propaganda and support democratic transformation. The Americans had invested months of care, resources, and education in preparing these prisoners to become advocates for different German future. That investment would yield returns measured in decades of German-American cooperation and lasting peace. June 1945 brought Weber's return to Germany, transformed by military defeat, Allied occupation and social collapse. His hometown near Hamburg was partially destroyed, buildings reduced to rubble by Allied bombing, infrastructure damaged beyond immediate repair. The physical devastation was severe, but not unexpected. Thompson's honest orientation had prepared prisoners for harsh realities awaiting them. Reuniting with Margaret was emotional chaos. She'd believed him dead for months, grieving the loss while struggling to survive in bombed city with collapsed food distribution and absent civil authority. When Weber appeared, thin but healthy, she couldn't immediately process his survival. "You're alive," she said, the words emerging as question rather than statement. "They told us American prisoners were tortured and executed. They said capture meant death, or dishonor worse than death. How are you alive? How are you healthy?" Weber showed her his medical records, the prescription glasses, the documentation of comprehensive care Americans had provided. He explained warm blankets and hot soup, medical attention exceeding Wehrmacht standards, letter-writing programs, Christmas inclusion, democratic education, dignified work, and systematic repatriation preparation. Margaret listened with visible disbelief, struggling to reconcile his testimony with years of propaganda about American brutality. "They gave you glasses. They filled your dental cavities. They taught you American accounting methods." She examined the documentation as if searching for evidence of forgery. Why would they waste resources on captured enemies? "Because their values demanded it," Weber explained patiently. "Americans believe all humans deserve dignity regardless of nationality or enemy status. They proved that belief through systematic behavior over months of consistent humane treatment. Everything we were taught about American racial inferiority and moral weakness was wrong, Margaret. Catastrophically, deliberately wrong." His testimony spread through community networks as other repatriated prisoners shared similar experiences. The consistent accounts from multiple sources made, dismissing them as individual aberration, impossible. Hundreds of German soldiers were testifying that American treatment had contradicted Nazi propaganda completely, that their captivity had revealed American civilization operating at level Germany had never approached. Former prisoners became advocates for democratic values they'd observed during imprisonment. Weber spoke at community gatherings, describing American industrial abundance, labor dignity, and political philosophy, emphasizing individual rights and government accountability to citizens. His transformation from Wehrmacht soldier to democracy advocate reflected broader German awakening to realities obscured by years of Nazi ideological control. Statistical accounting revealed mathematical superiority of humane treatment with brutal clarity. American POW camps achieved 97% survival rates compared to 38% in German facilities. The difference wasn't individual American kindness, but systematic social organization that prioritized human welfare even for captured enemies. German brutality had killed hundreds of thousands of Allied prisoners through deliberate starvation, inadequate medical care, forced labor, and summary execution. American humanity had saved German prisoners while simultaneously defeating German military forces. More significantly, American prisoner treatment had facilitated intelligence cooperation that shortened the war. Well-fed, comfortable prisoners talked freely about German positions, morale problems, and supply shortages. The information wasn't dramatic battlefield secrets, but useful tactical intelligence that accumulated into strategic advantage. Germans provided this intelligence voluntarily because humane treatment created conditions where cooperation seemed reasonable rather than treasonous. Weber reflected on devastating irony. German brutality had hardened Allied resistance while providing moral justification for total war against Nazi regime. American humanity had shortened German resistance while establishing moral authority for post-war democratic occupation. Cruelty had proven strategically inferior to compassion in achieving military objectives while maintaining possibility of post-war reconciliation. Community discussions revealed broader understanding that Nazi ideology had betrayed German people. The promised racial superiority had delivered military defeat, moral catastrophe, and international pariah status. The dismissed American weakness had proven to be terrifying strength that combined overwhelming industrial capacity with genuine moral authority. Everything Germans had been taught was inverted. The inferior race was actually superior. The weak democracy was actually strong. The corrupt values were actually civilized. Weber wrote final letter to Mitchell, thanking him for demonstrating American values that had transformed German understanding. The letter acknowledged that months of systematic humane treatment had accomplished what propaganda never could, creating genuine respect for democratic civilization and commitment to building different German future. Mitchell's response, received weeks later through Red Cross channels, expressed satisfaction that prisoner treatment had contributed to German democratic awakening. We believed that respecting your dignity would prove more powerful than brutality. Your testimony validates that belief and gives me hope that lasting peace is possible between our nations. The correspondence between former guard and former prisoner symbolized broader transformation underway in German-American relations. Enemies were becoming partners in democratic reconstruction. Battlefield adversaries were becoming advocates for shared values of human dignity, individual rights, and peaceful cooperation. Weber's testimony contributed to German acceptance of Allied occupation and democratic reforms. His experiences demonstrated that Americans sought German transformation rather than German destruction. The democracy offered superior social organization worth emulating rather than resisting. The credibility came from direct experience rather than propaganda. Weber had lived both systems and could testify which produced better outcomes for ordinary citizens. Years later, reflecting on his wartime experience, Weber understood that American prisoner treatment had been investment in post-war peace, with returns measured in decades. The humane care had created generation of German advocates for democracy who remembered that American strength included moral behavior. Those memories facilitated NATO alliance development and lasting German-American friendship built on shared democratic values. The lesson transcended individual experience to reveal strategic truth. Civilized warfare behavior creates conditions for post-conflict peace and cooperation. Nations that maintain humane standards even in war demonstrate trustworthiness that enables reconciliation afterward. American commitment to prisoner dignity during wartime established moral authority that supported democratic transformation of former enemy into reliable ally. Weber never forgot the warm blanket on that December night in 1944. The hot soup that exceeded expectations, Mitchell's professional humanity, Thompson's advocacy for letter writing, the Christmas inclusion, the democratic education, the dignified labor, the comprehensive medical care, and the respectful farewell. Those experiences had transformed him from Nazi believer into democracy advocate, from enemy prisoner into friend of American civilization. And he was not alone. Millions of Germans underwent similar transformation as American occupation demonstrated that democratic values produced prosperity, freedom, and dignity superior to Nazi promises of racial destiny through conquest. The prisoner treatment Weber experienced was microcosm of broader American approach, proving that compassion was more powerful weapon than cruelty, that moral strength enhanced military effectiveness, and that civilized behavior in warfare built foundation for lasting peace. Germany never forgot this lesson about strength through humanity. The democratic society built on American occupation zones became prosperous, peaceful partner in international community. The NATO alliance between former enemies became cornerstone of European security. The German-American friendship that seemed impossible in 1944 became reality by 1950s and endured through Cold War and beyond. All because Americans gave German prisoners blankets and hot soup instead of torture and execution. All because systematic humane treatment demonstrated that civilization and military power were complementary rather than opposing forces. All because treating enemies with dignity proved strategically superior to brutality in achieving lasting victory that included peace rather than merely conquest. Weber lived into his 80s, always keeping his American prescription glasses as reminder of transformation that began with unexpected kindness during darkest winter of terrible war. The glasses represented vision restored, literally and metaphorically, ability to see clearly both physical world and moral truth that Nazi ideology had obscured. They were testament to American civilization that changed world by proving that strength without mercy was ultimately weaker than power guided by human compassion. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.